But the city's wealth and luxury attracts more than just tourists. In the mid-2010s, women in this resort town became the prey of a devious Casanova, a man who'd do anything to get what he wanted. Located just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, is the city of Scottsdale. It first made a name for itself as a resort town in the early 1900s.
The genesis of Scottsdale comes from 1909. There was an establishment, and most of the people that came to Scottsdale at that time came there for the natural beauty of the Arizona desert and beautiful sunsets, beautiful scenery.
It offers some of the most beautiful scenery that you'll find in the world. There's great opportunities for hiking. The sun is shining almost 360 days out of 365 days of the year, so you can't really beat it.
Within a few decades, the region also began to attract African Americans fleeing the Jim Crow South.
That ideal of Phoenix, of it being a place where you could come and be whoever you want to be, is what really attracted a lot of African Americans who were migrating from the South to Arizona. That idea of being able to maybe start your own business or build your house and allow your children to have a better education, a better life.
Unfortunately, discriminatory redlining policies trapped Black residents in the city's most neglected neighborhoods.
We were really nestled in the South Phoenix area because of housing restrictions. We couldn't live north of a certain point. Part of the beauty of the housing restrictions is the idea that we were all together. We were all in this to become successful. So you saw a lot of Black businesses that were formed, a lot of Black churches that were established in South Phoenix. That beauty came out of the burning bush of racism. And we have persevered and we have, spread out to other areas, and we've seen a lot of success here.
Today, Scottsdale's Black population is still relatively small, but growing.
A lot of professional African Americans who have achieved a level of success to where they can purchase the homes that are in Scottsdale and are looking for quality education for their children. You definitely see that sector of the African American community leaning towards Scottsdale as a place to live. You'll find most of the African Americans in Scottsdale taking advantage of that nightlife culture, especially younger African Americans. And there are a lot of African American promoters that are building connections with the nightclub owners. So they're really bringing a big young crowd to the Scottsdale area.
The city's vibrant nightlife has become one of its most distinguishing features.
I think Scottsdale being like the Miami Beach of Arizona or the Hollywood, that's where the rich and famous go. That's where a lot of celebrities are. That's the popular place to be.
If you're wanting to be seen, if you're wanting to flash your money, if you're going to be bigger than life, the only place you can live or hang out is Scottsdale.
In 2015, one member of Scottsdale's elite stood apart from the rest. 34-year-old Dalen Pierce.
The life that he lived was something out of a movie, right? Driving Lamborghinis and, BMWs and living in $1 million houses. And, everybody knew his name in Scottsdale. When he walked into the club, everybody was, it's, DP.
He doesn't have to wait online. He could want a table at one of those outside bars, and the staff is going over telling him, you gotta leave. DP's getting this table. Yeah, it was insane how much he was respected.
He can do things like spend $20,000. They're standing on a table, making it rain $100 bills. It was always this show.
Dalen's reputation turned him into a local celebrity, which would make his fall from grace all the more shocking.
I've seen some tragic stories in Scottsdale of people who want to show the world that they've got the money, they've got the nice cars. They get to a point where they can't pull themselves out of it. Scottsdale can chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful.
Dalen Pierce was born on April 9th, 1981. His childhood was very different from the life he would later come to enjoy.
He experienced so much tragedy, more than most people experience in their entire life. His dad was in prison ever since he was born, and so he was raised by his mother, or he started to be at least. But his mother was addicted to crack cocaine.
Dalen, when he was 5, his mom died of a drug overdose. He was in and out of group homes, and then he would bounce back to his aunt's house and then to his grandma's house. And so it was kind of this, revolving door.
When he was 10, Dalen finally found a place he could call home.
His stepmom reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a relationship with you. Your father's in prison, but he would like to see you." And she became kind of this second mom to him.
He has a lot of memories with her. He always says she was such a nice lady. He remembers things that she's cooked for him, brought him to see his dad.
Unfortunately, it would also end in tragedy.
One night, him and his cousin were in their bedroom, and somebody broke into the house. He could hear his stepmom screaming in the other room. And the guy comes into the bedroom where Dalen and his cousin are and said, "Don't get up, stay here. If you leave this room, I'm going to kill you." This man stabbed his stepmom 41 times and raped her. Dalen and the cousin hid under the bed, and finally he heard the door close, and Dalen went in there, and his stepmom was still alive, but of course, bleeding everywhere. And he tried to help. He ran out of the house, ran down the street, grabbed somebody that was related to her. And by the time they came back into the house, she had died.
For the next few years, Dalen stayed with a series of other relatives.
They raised him until he was about 12 or 13 years old. At that time, his dad got out of prison, so he went back into the custody of his dad.
He did see his dad a few times, and then a jealous ex-boyfriend of his dad's new girlfriend came and killed his dad. I believe that that's kind of where it started, with him feeling like he needed to provide for himself by any means necessary.
In order to support himself, Dalen turned to petty crime.
It was Dalen versus the world, I think. And I think that's how he felt, which is the world took my mother from me. The world took my father from me. The world had me grow up in a lifestyle of poverty. And so I need to do what I need to do to get by and to live the lifestyle that I want.
I know he was
While only 18 years old, his crime sort of changed a little bit and shifted into another gear. He basically sold a stolen car to an undercover cop, got convicted, and was sentenced to 13 years in prison.
the court system did feel sorry for him, did want to give him chances, because they did. And then when they learned that he just wasn't going to do the right thing, he got a huge sentence.
When he got out of prison in March of 2011, Dalen was nearly 30 years old.
He didn't have a plan, right? He didn't have someone he could parole to. There wasn't family that he could go to. So he was released to a halfway house on the west side of Phoenix. And he was sharing a room with 2 sex offenders. So I said, "Hey, come stay with me." The first thing he does, right, he sits down on the couch and he's like, I want a phone, right? They didn't have cell phones when he was out before. So we go to the phone store and he gets his Motorola and he's just standing in the phone store, you know, looking at this and he's like, what do I do with this, right? This is cool. I've got my own phone. He's so excited. He's like a kid in a candy store.
Imagine how much changes in a decade, right? Like, especially in our technology area. If you go away from modern society for 10 years and come out, you're not going to know how to use the phones. You're not going to know what an application is. Maybe not know how to use the internet.
He discovers the internet has dating sites. And this is so exciting. He comes running in the living room. He's like, hey, have you ever heard of Match.com? So, you know, I helped him take some good pictures and, you know, kind of helped him rewrite his little dating profile. And little did I know, right, I created a monster.
For visitors to Scottsdale, Arizona, nowhere captures the city's western charm more than its historic Old Town district. Over the years, the area has become a cultural center for the city's Black community.
There's a lot of African-American promoters who are drawn to these nightclubs and host events on certain nights. What I would like to see more of is African-American ownership in these nightclubs that are in the Old Town area. You know, if we're going to bring these big crowds, why not own these spots and then use the revenue that you've earned from these nightclubs to better our communities?
Old Town is also where you'll find many of Scottsdale's singles looking for love. And one of the city's most eligible bachelors was 30-year-old Dateline Pierce.
Dalen's always been a social person. So you come out of prison with those types of felonies without the type of job skill or formal education that you need. Where are you going to meet people?
That first year when he got out, he truly just stumbled upon this dating site. I'm not at work, I have nothing to do, the internet's new. Once we got his profile together, these girls like me. They want to go places with me, right? They want to meet me for dinner. Oh my God, I had 30 messages. Can you imagine 30 people want to meet me?
Among the women pursuing Dalen was Tara, a wealthy older woman looking for a playmate.
Tara was well off, she had money, and Dalen was charming and attractive and charismatic. And so the two of them connected.
She took him on trips, New York, nice California trips, things that Dalen would have never experienced in a whole lifetime.
I think that Dalen fell in love with kind of that lifestyle.
The relationship didn't last long, but it gave Dalen a taste of the lifestyle he wanted.
That was kind of the catalyst that made him realize they see something that I don't see, right? These women, they like me and they're willing to pay to be in a relationship with me. And he was like, okay, I do have this little superpower. Let me see what I can do with this. And it kind of spiraled out of control after that.
Dalen's next connection was a flight attendant named Rose Reddy.
I first met Dalen on Match.com. He had a really great smile, and he seemed like he would be somebody who would be fun to hang out with. He seemed really put together and very confident the way he carried himself and about speaking passionately about his job. He said he was a financial broker. And what he did was he specialized in penny and nickel stocks of pharmaceuticals. For Dalen, it seemed like money was not an obstacle whatsoever. He had, a Porsche, he had the Beamer, he had a decked out Jeep. He, had the one house in Central Phoenix and moved into the one in Paradise Valley. He did things that made me think that he genuinely cared, which in return then made me care about him more. He was a good guy, and he was, nice enough to help out my daughter and to forward me money to help out my son.
Dateline also offered to help Rose manage her money by investing in pharmaceutical stocks.
He was like, well, if you did this, you'll still have, all of your nest egg, plus you'll be earning this much interest that you can live off of. So it's a win-win situation. He was talking about I would have like anywhere, depending on the month, $10,000 to $20,000 a month return on the investment. I would double my salary. I'd be able to take care of things. I'd be able to pay for my daughter's college. And I was on my way to doing really good things when it all kind of come crashing down.
On Daline's advice, Rose withdrew all the money from her retirement fund to invest with his company, Credit Investment Group.
Dateline said it could take up to a couple of months or whatever for it to kick in, but he would, cover my cost until then. And I remember the next month I was like, hey, I got bills that are due. I kept calling, and then he changed his number. So I didn't hear from him for like a couple of weeks. And then he finally sent me a text. He just tried to reassure me that there were just some hiccups. That was when it started all like falling down. And I told him that I wanted my money back. I go, if you don't give me all my money, I am going to call the police, is that whatever? And he goes, you go right ahead. He goes, I got 6 lawyers waiting. You'll never get a dime. And I'm like, that's when it all came real for me.
In 2015, con man Dalen Pierce was at the top of his game, and Scottsdale, Arizona was his playground.
Everyone fell in love with Dalen. Even the club owners, they would give him bottles on credit, $5,000, $10,000 nights where he'd come back and pay it the next night. But if you know that you're going to keep getting money from other people, of course you're going to throw away that money. You're getting more.
Dalen's spending habits had also earned him a different kind of attention, however.
When you have somebody that is conning people out of millions of dollars and multiple people, you're going to draw attention from powerful people in the government.
On December the 17th, 2015, the FBI received its first complaint against Dalen, and it was by a woman by the name of Sarah.
I met Dalen Pierce online on Match.com. We agreed to meet at a bar one night, went over there, and he looked like he did online, and I liked him. And of course, just like first dates go, you start doing this. So what do you do for a living? He told me that he was a stockbroker. I said, I have my portion of a 401k, and I want to find somewhere to invest it. And it was just this general conversation because that was his specialty. That's his profession, that's his field. He found out I was an animal lover. And pretty soon he started saying things like, if you invest, you can take out that money and you can start a no-kill animal shelter. So he was using everything that I had told him to come back with, hey, I can help you do this. I really didn't know what to do, but he kept pushing and pushing. And I am the type of person who I want to believe you. I want to trust people. I took a leap of faith. I finally just said, fine, I'll do it.
On March 2nd, Sarah transferred $117,000 from her 401k to Dalen's investment account.
Then he came up with, yeah, but I told him that you're going to invest $200,000. So we got to get the rest of that money. What? He said, so what we're going to do, my office is going to get this all set up. We're going to get some loan applications out there, and then that will also go to the investment. Next day or two, he starts calling me and telling me, you have an appointment at this credit union. And sure enough, all the paperwork had been filled out. I just went and signed and took this cash, and he had me depositing. When I look back on it now, I was completely naive about this, completely naive.
A little while later, Sarah was admitted to a psychiatric facility for help with bipolar depression.
First 30 days, I couldn't even have my phone. When I did get my phone back, there were no messages from him. I checked my email, there were no emails from him. One of the house moms one night said, okay, so let's call him. She said, I'll be right here with you. Let's call him. And I dialed him on my cell phone, and I got the do-do-do. The number you have dialed is not in service. And the house mom's jaw dropped to the floor. I was just kind of in disbelief. We then looked up his address that I knew, and it showed foreclosure short sale. So I had completely lost all contact with him and my money. What I didn't know was that he was also applying for credit cards using my information. He would then take them to businesses where I realized he knew people, and he would have them do a cash advance through the register, $3,500, $4,500 at a time.
When the reality of her situation sank in, Sarah went to the FBI.
They asked me to bring in whatever I had. They took all of my phone records, took all of my texts off of the phone, interviewed me for a while.
The FBI was able to determine that this is not just some little small-time gig here. This is something that is massive. It is something that is more than just your run-of-the-mill ordinary fraud.
I don't think that the authorities liked the idea that somebody was out there gaming the system as much as Dalen Pierce was.
He needed to pay for what he had done. And I was going to keep moving forward to make that happen.
Scottsdale Casanova Dalen Pierce turned online dating into a get-rich-quick scheme. But now he's being investigated by the FBI.
At the end of 2015, the FBI, after receiving its initial complaint from a woman named Sarah, received another complaint from another victim who said that Dalen had scammed her too.
He's living this lifestyle that he wants to get. And then again, confidence and greed take over. And Dalen's like, why one woman? Why stop at one woman?
A forensic accountant will look through the books and the documents provided. They determined that none of the investments that Dalen had told the ladies that he had done were ever done. What Dalen was really doing was lining his own pockets. He was taking the money that was supposed to be used for investments by his female victims and going out buying fancy cars, renting big mansions, and basically just having a party.
To solidify their case, FBI agents come up with a plan to catch Dalen red-handed.
The FBI set up a sting. They produced an agent and had that agent pose as a potential date for Dalen. She created a profile and set up a date with Dalen at a swanky restaurant in Scottsdale. The agent shows up at the restaurant. She is there waiting on Dalen, but unfortunately, he never shows. They set up another date with Dalen. Whether or not he was on to them or not, it's not clear, but he was a no-show for the second time.
Even without a confession, investigators are confident they have enough to make an arrest. And on May 25, 2016, they make their move.
When he was getting his oil changed, they actually arrested him at the car place.
There was like 14 feds jumped out of this van and surrounded him. They all had their automatic rifles on him.
I was grinning from ear to ear that he had been busted. And maybe was finally now going to meet his fate.
When they question Dalen, he claims that he's doing nothing wrong.
Do you have a business called Credit Investment Group?
I mean, what does there understand? If you can show me documentation of proof these people gave me this money, I'm just asking you a question.
I think it really reveals a lot to understand about Dalen Pierce watching that video and how he interacted with the detectives even when they're confronting him. Because you see that confidence in there. And you see him talking. He's like, no, let me clear up the confusion. Here's how it is.
Show me documentation to prove that these people gave me money. That's all I'm asking.
How do you know that we don't?
Because you don't, because none of this is true.
He was never backed into a wall. He never was like, oh yeah, you caught me red-handed or anything. He thought he could talk his way out of anything and justify anything.
You guys have no paperwork whatsoever stating that these people gave money to me. State for that. You guys don't have, nothing.
Investigators have enough to charge Dalen with fraud. But just a few hours later, he's back on the streets of Scottsdale.
Someone bonded him out, like literally within hours. He got out like before the news even came out.
He shows up and he's got this ankle bracelet and he sits down on the bed and I'm like, what is happening, right? And that's the moment where you know things are about to start falling out of the sky.
Fortunately, as the news of Dalen's arrest breaks, the FBI receives a surge of new tips.
A lot of the women didn't call the authorities until Dalen was on the news. That's when kind of the floodgates started to open to say, oh, that guy, he did that to me. It really blew up. I don't even know if the FBI knew how many people were going to come forward.
All of the victims tell a similar story.
They began to get more and more calls from victims who said, hey, I know this guy. I met him on a dating site. He would show up. He had on these very fancy clothes and told me that he had made all this money in pharmaceutical stocks.
Through his character and his charisma, Dalen was able to have them give him money. And he set it up in a way that he was going to invest it and they were going to be successful.
He preyed on very specific people. In my case, I was easy to manipulate at that point, and I was vulnerable.
Police determined that over the course of several years, Dalen defrauded at least 13 women for a total of $2 million.
When you look at the timeline of those victims, it appears that it's about every 3 months he started on someone new. Knowing that there were other victims out there, knowing that I wasn't the only one, gave me the courage to move forward with getting him punished.
The U.S. prison system was intended to be a place where inmates could be rehabilitated, but it really isn't that simple.
With over 40,000 inmates, Arizona ranks within the top 10 of the highest prison population in the country. With a recidivism rate of about 40%, that means that almost half the inmates will return to prison at some time. This will cost the taxpayers of Arizona approximately $24,000 per inmate a year. It is a well-known fact that transitioning from prison back to civilian life is not an easy task. But if cities like Scottsdale want to reduce that cost to their taxpayers, then they would be well to invest in programs that assist the inmates in transitioning back to a normal life. After serving his 13 years in prison, Dateline was released back to the streets. He did not have a job. He was homeless. And although that does not justify his criminal behavior or his theft, the question is, can we really do better?
Once a high roller in Scottsdale's Old Town, scam artist Dateline Pierce has lost everything following his arrest. But he's not letting that slow him down.
This big life that he was living came crashing down, it seems like overnight. And a few weeks later, he's living with some girl in a regular apartment. He was still going to the club and, going to ridiculous parties. I'm like, Dateline, you are on a path for self-destruction. And he's like, if these are the days that I've got left, I'm gonna live them.
Dateline may have lost his main source of income, but for a career criminal, there are plenty of other ways to make money. Before long, he comes up with a new scheme.
Dateline loved the lifestyle. He and one of his friends rented a luxurious villa at a Scottsdale resort.
There was some famous rapper guy here, and it was his birthday. So, of course, Dateline, still being bigger than life, wanted to throw this guy a birthday party.
They had everyone over, hundreds of people, and had a big lavish party.
And it went for 2 nights. The cops had to come multiple times to tell people to be quiet,
Eventually, they were kicked out of the party. And lo and behold, the credit card used to secure the location turned out to be stolen.
A police investigation soon turns up evidence of a much larger identity theft operation.
Essentially, what they would do is they would look up people that had recently passed away in the obituary section of newspapers or online. And from that, they would run a credit report in order to find out who, if anyone, they had credit cards with.
Having gotten that information, they would contact credit card companies that someone who had died may have had and ask the companies to overnight them another credit card.
Credit card company would provide them with the tracking number, and then they would track the package all the way to the house, and Dateline or the co-defendant would show up and pull into the driveway at the same time that the FedEx truck was pulling into the driveway in a nice business suit, say, oh, is that my package? And sign for it, and the person thinks nothing of it.
Once again, Dateline claims he's doing nothing wrong.
He told me he didn't really have anything to do with it. However, I think that a lot of it was more guilt by association.
And Dateline was more like a bodyguard, and so he got paid in that respect and would help out with different aspects of the crime that way.
The luxurious villa had actually been rented by a female friend of Dateline. Unfortunately for Dateline, he was seen on surveillance in her company, and basically that gave law enforcement enough to charge him as an accomplice.
They've got a picture of Dateline in the front seat of this car, and you can see him with his ankle bracelet on. And I'm like, bro, you're already, being watched by the feds.
You can't say, okay, I didn't do anything wrong when you're out on bond for scamming people. It's like the same thing.
By January of 2017, investigators have enough evidence to charge Dateline with a new set of crimes.
And if they think that you're a danger to society on top of that, then of course they want you locked up. So he was taken into custody. He was facing very serious charges.
When Dateline got arrested the first time, he wasn't too concerned about it, or he could have just been hiding it really well. When Dateline got arrested the second time, he was completely scared, very fearful. I actually kind of felt nauseous watching him.
News of his arrest makes waves in the Scottsdale community, where many people still think of him as a minor celebrity.
This makes the news. This was brought to the attention of the Attorney General for the entire state of Arizona, which prompted him to say that Dateline probably deserved to spend the rest of his life in prison.
And the AG kept just saying, we're going to make an example out of this. We are going to show that no one else like Dateline comes to Arizona and pulls this.
He got then indicted on a different charge on something separate, and he now had a full indictment. I believe it was 29 felonies.
He was terrified because he knew now you can't even bond out because you're on bond and just got arrested again. So he just knew he was going straight to prison from there.
After conning more than a dozen women, Dalen Pierce now faces 29 felony charges and the possibility of life in prison. No matter the outcome, his days as a player in Scottsdale's club scene are already over.
None of them wanted anything to do with Dalen as soon as he got arrested. They all had an excuse. These people turned their backs on him after he did probably more for them than he did for anybody.
Those clubs really care about the bottom line more than anything. So if you're not able to maintain that level of success and you're not able to manage your money correctly, Scottsdale can chew you up and spit you out.
For Dalen, the experience is nothing new.
When things happen in our formative years, it really affects us as adults, whether we know it or not. I think what Dalen took out of the damage that had happened with all of these tragedies is that I'm not going to get close to people, because when I start to get close to people, I lose them.
I think that Dalen ends up in this cycle of criminal activity because it's the quickest way to get what you need, right? Yes, could he have gone and got a job at 16, 17? Absolutely. But back then, minimum wage is $4 an hour. Is that feeding you? Is that clothing you?
I think a big part of Dalen is I don't want to live in the same way that I grew up. And so I'm going to make sure that I don't do that. He always thought that all of this stuff was victimless crimes. And he thought, big corporation, big credit agencies, big banks, they will fund this stuff.
When you're conditioned to know that tomorrow could bring the end of your life, the end of someone else's life, you could be homeless, you could be hungry, you don't worry about tomorrow. You worry about what can I do this hour to feed myself, to fit in, to feel comfortable.
With his trial date approaching, Dalen decides to throw himself on the mercy of the court instead.
He called me one day and said, okay, so I talked to my attorney, and basically the DA is saying if I do not take this plea deal, they're going to give me life if I lose. So he really had no choice but to take a plea deal. And I said, well, how long? And then he started crying and he said 15 years.
At his sentencing hearing, Dalen's victims are given the opportunity to tell their stories.
It's definitely been a struggle. There's definitely times when I didn't want to be here and I didn't want to, I didn't think I could keep putting one foot in front of the other, but I just always had my faith.
When he heard that people had their credit scores plummet, when they had trouble with housing, when they had trouble with jobs, when they no longer could retire at the age that they planned to, when their life savings was gone, when they had medical bills, when they had to see psychologists and therapists about relationship issues. I think that affected him. For the first time, I think it hit him and sunk in that people's lives were affected, that this was not a victimless crime anymore.
While there's no doubt Dalen deserves punishment, his friends question the justice of another lengthy prison sentence. For young men who spend most of their lives behind bars, can there ever be another way?
He did need to be stopped. I don't think the way that he's being stopped is the right way. The prison system is setting everybody up in that place for failure.
Being a felon is a revolving door. There is no good answer, right? You go to prison, you supposedly serve your time and try to prove that you've become this better person, but you get out and no one will give you an opportunity.
Dalen's either going to find a legal, lawful way to make money, to live the life that he wants to live, and he'll do it, or he's going to find an illegal way to do it.
What I hope this time is, now that he's older and he has a better ability to process what's happened to him and how to kind of manage life, that he gets a chance to reflect on all of the things that have led him to where he is now, and truly make a change.